nearly 8 years ago, you got a call from your bishop one night. Tell us about that call.
Yeah, so it was actually February 14th, right? And I got a phone call, invited me to come to the chancery on Monday, and I did. And the bishop asked me if I'd be willing to help a priest out. And I, of course, said, well, of course, I would love to help a priest. And he went on to explain about how there's a priest in his assignment that he was struggling. And the way that I was going to help this priest out was by actually taking his assignment. And at this point, I was 5.5 years into my parish assignment, and I was coaching, and great things. We just opened a perpetual adoration chapel, and we had redone the interior of the churches, and there were great things happening. And so it's February, and so I said, Archbishop, I prayed to the Holy Spirit before this meeting, and I said, I will say yes to what the Archbishop asks me because I made a promise of obedience. So if you believe that I need to go to this assignment, then I will do that. And normally, like, assignment changes take place in June. So I was like, when is this going to happen? And he said, on March 1st. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. So our diocese has been going through a merger process up to that point, and the assignment was 4 parishes that were being merged into one. And the priest who is shepherding the transition made the decision to step away from the priesthood. And those next 13 days were brutal, of trying to wrap my brain around this new assignment while at the same time saying goodbye to a parish community that I'd given myself to for 5.5 years. And it was hard. It was very, 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 very hard. It's one of the things about the priesthood that can be challenging, is that you give yourself wholeheartedly to a community, to a group of people, and then you leave. I look back at it now, clearly see God's hand in it, clearly see that this is where he was leading me, and I'm thankful.
Where are the 4 parishes?
So the 4 parishes are in the southeastern corner of Indiana. I always say on the Indiana side of Cincinnati. And there are 4 parishes that date back to 1824. And so they were all founded within a few years after each other. And they're pretty close together. And they're all, when the 4 of them became one, all the congregations were just about the same size. They were all about 300 families, 200 families. And canonically, by the time I had arrived, they had by canon law, they had become one parish with 4 buildings, and they were charged by the archdiocese to become a parish with 1 church building and 1 site within 2 years. And that was the task that was at hand.
And how did that go?
Well, getting on the ground, my first desire was to get to know the people and to make a very clear statement that I'm here for one reason, and that's to help you fall in love with Jesus and to love his church. And I realize that right now you don't like his church. At least you don't like the decisions that the church are making. All 4 parishes went into a Vatican appeal. So when a parish closes, they have a certain time period, according to canon law, to appeal the decision of the bishop to close the parish. And all 4 of them had hired canon lawyers and were paying them to open an appeal to be heard by the Vatican. By the time I had arrived, any other church that had been closed, their appeals had been shut down by the Vatican. These 4 had not. So there's actually some confusion and some concern, even on the side of the diocese, that these 4 parishes, what happens if their appeals are flipped? But anyways, I just showed up and I was like, listen, all I can do is help these people love Jesus. And so I did all that I possibly could to preach the gospel, be joyful. And then my other modus operandi was, I just need to listen to people. I need to talk to as many people as possible. I need to listen to what they're saying. And I need to just start doing my research. And so I had a lot of time because I didn't have anything to do. I mean, I literally I arrived on the ground, and I had a lot stuff to do, but my life clearly from where I'd come from, my life was easier in a certain sense. So I spent a lot of time listening, a lot of time hearing people yell, not so much at me. They were angry at God. They were angry at the church. Sometimes the anger was at themselves and their own community, that they believe had somehow failed in what it was to be a parish, and that's why they were being shut down. I met with people over dinner. I met with people in my office. I met people, sometimes it would be an exchange at a gas station. I remember one guy yelling at me at a gas station about how I had been sent to shut down their churches. And I was like, why don't we just go over here and talk for a little bit? So just trying to really be open and to listen to what people have to say. And that listening then led to me realizing that maybe this wasn't the best decision. And I met with my parish council, and I made a proposal to the parish council, like, you guys have been in existence since 1823, and maybe there's another way to look at this. And so we created out of that the concept that we have now, which is All Saints Parish is one parish. And if we understand what a parish is, it's a family, it's a community. So there is one parish, there's one community, but that parish, that community just happens to have 4 places to worship. And so we call them campuses. And I said, but if we're going to do this, this can't just be a way for us to save buildings or to create historical monuments. No, we need to be one parish. So one parish council, one finance council, one religious ed, one youth ministry program, one lady sodality, one everything. And they're like, Father, that's what we want. We're willing to move forward. So I went and met with the bishop, and I remember the phrase that I had kind of come up with is I think we're being too German with the Germans. Show me in canon law, Archbishop, where it says that a parish is one church building, one school building, one parish hall. Why can't it be something different? Why can't it look different? And so the concept ended not just being approved by the bishop, but ultimately really being embraced by the people. I think a lot of them realized okay, this is our only way to possibly exist as we knew who we were. But it also then became an excitement about how do we actually create something new. So there was something new being created, a new identity, a new community, a new model of ministry, while at the same time preserving something that was very important to them, which was their buildings.
What was the culture at the beginning, and how has the culture evolved over time?
Well, culture is a very big thing, as you know. I think you've written a book about it. And the culture in the beginning was a culture of this is mine, this is the way that we do things, this is how it's always been. And Father, we don't need to change this or that. Through this process, the culture is now a very we-oriented culture, not a me-oriented culture. And it's a culture that looks for best practices instead of this is how we've always done it, or this is the only way to do it, or it's really is. So I always use Our Lady Sodality. We had 4 Lady Sodalities that had to come together and become one Lady Sodality. And I remember going to one of the meetings, and the ladies had well, we do this, and we do this, and we do funeral meals this way, and our funeral meals are better than yours. And the question had to be asked, well, okay, so we have 4 ways to do a funeral meal. What's the best way? What are you doing, and what are you doing, and what are you doing? And how do we actually bring that all together and create the most powerful experience we can for grieving families? Okay, so this is how you did youth ministry, and this is how you did youth ministry, and this is how you did youth ministry. What is the best way for us to do this? And I bet you all have something that can contribute here. How do we collaborate and make that the most amazing experience? Instead of being backed up in our corners, trying to protect ourselves, we're now actually in a position where we're constantly asking, how do we do this better to more effectively and more efficiently preach the gospel?
So you're in rural Indiana. You got these 4 parishes becoming one in a time where parishes are merging all across the country, all around the world. And honestly, in a great majority of cases, it's a massive failure. You've had this tremendous success in creating this one community. How important was fried chicken to the whole process?
Fried chicken is actually really, really important. And I mean this. So I arrived in March. So these local churches in Southeastern Indiana have the best fried chicken in the nation. I'll say that. I know that you got some dislikes or something on your YouTube channel here, but fried chicken dinners are a huge fundraiser, and each of these parishes has a local festival. When I had arrived, it had been decided that because there were now going to be one parish, there was no longer going to be these different festivals. There was either going to be a new one or zero. And I remember showing up, and I was there in March, and we were financially, we were in the red, we were bleeding, and we needed money. But this new concept came out of like, we can be 4 campuses with one parish, and we have 3 festivals every single summer that our parish puts on. Each festival on the weekends, 300 plus volunteers just to put the festival on. So the festival exists to make chicken, which does make us money. But the festival actually exists for the sake of the community, the camaraderie, and the joy and the laughter among ourselves that is desperately needed to get people out of their homes. The preservation of the festivals that first year actually was a game changer in the long run on community and identity. People need people. And those chicken festivals are really people needing people.
Did you like fried chicken before you were moved to these parishes?
I was very blessed as a seminarian. Way back in 2002, I was assigned to a Southeastern Indiana parish, and I had fallen in love with chicken. So coming home in a certain sense, I was ready. Oh, it's fantastic. It is so good. I'm just going to stop.
I remember before I came out there to speak to the youth group, I saw an article in the New York Times about the fried chicken.
It's true.
And you were gracious enough to take me out for a fried chicken.
New York Times declares
Declares
that Southeastern Indiana has the best fried chicken.